It is 7:40 p.m. Central Standard Time, United States. Broadcasting live from all across the great state of Texas, it is the BYBS show. My name's Mickey. I'll be your humble producer.
My name's Coolhand.
And my name's Zubi.
And I, lovely listeners, am your cousin Vinny, here to get you through the day.
And what we have here is a fantastic show today, starting off with the one, the only, Super Bowl.
That garbage.
Yeah, we kind of start and finish fairly quickly as it feels like the Super Bowl did. I'm not sure that there's really one memory that sticks out in my mind from that game. It's right at the end, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick deciding to go for that field goal to go up 13-3, and that's it. I don't remember. It is boring, not memorable at all, and we had to deal with another Patriot.
It really was a miserable game to watch. I found myself actually flipping back and forth between a movie.
Well, what movie was it?
Not a good one.
Ooh, that's when you know it's bad.
I honestly don't even know the name of it. It was on
That feels softcore porn-esque, but yeah, the Super Bowl was a stinker. It was.
No,
it wasn't fun.
Premium, you know.
Yeah, I think that we watched, instead of a defensive game, we watched a kickers take the show game.
Yay, punters.
Yeah, that's not what you want in the Super Bowl. We got spoiled with a great AFC and NFC championship, full of controversy with Saints-Rams and then Chiefs-Patriots. Each had just drama. It was controversy. It was everything you want in a football game. And then you get let down that way in the Super Bowl. It's a bummer. But, we're here once again, and the NFL is gone.
And I've heard throughout certain circles that a certain fantasy football app actually lost a lot of money on the Super Bowl. Do any of you know if that is true?
I heard New Jersey lost a ton on that game.
Yeah, DraftKings is actually fairly new to this whole betting thing, especially when it comes to the Super Bowl, and they didn't understand how to hedge their bets properly, and they lost millions.
Millions, you say?
Oh, yeah, it was a big deal. They got killed. I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was some outrageous number. It was one of the biggest losses that DraftKings ever.
How'd they lose? I mean, was it just like the way people bet, they had to pay out the bets a certain way? Or, pardon me for being ignorant to that.
Well, I know their over or under was pretty high because they thought this was going to be, huge. So everybody bet under instead of betting over.
In total, they lost $5 million on the Super Bowl betting.
$5 million.
That's a terrible bottom line for a game that I'm sure is supposed to be one of the most profitable days of the year.
What did they?
Absolutely, and they really advertised that they had free bets, which is something that Vegas never really does, because Vegas they still have to pay out the tax. They still have to pay their taxes. So Nevada still gets their take regardless of how well the casinos do or don't. So that's kind of how they come up with that. But DraftKings was new to it and said, sure, bet as much as you want or as little as you want, and there's no consequences.
And this is all prompted by the New Jersey giving way to gambling.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, our local Dallas Cowboys have recently announced a partnership with one of the casinos up in Oklahoma, so this does seem to be a part of a recurring trend throughout sports.
And one of the biggest things that DraftKings struggled with early on, that they noticed that they had 85% of bets were going on to the Patriots. And so, Vegas shifted around. They were at 65% money being placed on the Patriots. And so Vegas shifted around, and they got it down to only 52. So they lost, but not too much. But then DraftKings never really shifted around, and they ended up being at 91% of all bets were for the Patriots.
Oh my God.
I mean, if you're a bettor, that's a smart bet to make. The Patriots were the favored team, were they not?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, they were the team with the experience. They were the team. I mean, I guess they showed it in the game that they were better prepared.
Yeah, that is a point I'll make. Not to get away from our betting conversation, or maybe to get away from our betting conversation. I don't even know. But I will say in that game, there was one thing that was awesome in the Super Bowl, and I think it's the legend that is Bill
Belichick, the Patriots coach.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think.
Guys, they showed up to play that game. I mean, they were more prepared for the Rams than the Rams were prepared for the Patriots, and that just shows his experience and how great he really is.
Yeah, I think one thing you really got to recognize is that you had the youngest coach to win the Super Bowl going up against the oldest coach to win the Super Bowl ever. And, it's not easy for him. He doesn't have a lot of success because they just plucked that franchise out of St. Louis, 3 years ago? That is a fresh franchise without much success.
Yeah, the Rams were in a terrible spot, too, when he fished them out of St. Louis. You're right. And I just thought it was amazing the way Bill Belichick, you saw what the Rams were able to do week after week and systematically just destroy teams on offense. Everybody's talking about Sean McVay. Sean McVay is a revolution on the offensive side of the ball. And Bill Belichick came out there and held him to 3 points. I mean, they couldn't do anything. That's why we call the game so boring. It's because the Patriots defense they couldn't do anything on offense. It was amazing.
It is quite interesting that the Super Bowl was such a low-scoring game. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw it somewhere, maybe on ESPN or maybe SportsCenter, that said that this is the lowest total scoring Super Bowl ever with 16 points. Now, I believe that to be true, but does anyone have any facts that suggest otherwise?
If I was going to bet, I would say something from like 1968, but I don't know. I would totally believe it.
It was just punting. It was just punt after punt after punt after punt after punt. That's what made it so.
I think this was the first time in Super Bowl history that the Super Bowl halftime show leading act had more points than both teams combined. You had the Rams had nothing, the Patriots had 3, and Maroon had 5.
Maroon did have 5. And we got to see hunky Adam Levine with his shirt off. You see, that was something.
Good
That's
for
a
him.
double standard if I ever said something. Janet Jackson, what's going on?
Maybe that was a tribute.
Also,
that felt like a
Super Bowl.
tribute.
I feel like all of us are missing the biggest controversy that we all didn't get to see at this year's halftime show. You all know what it is. May he rest in peace. Stephen Hellenberg and SpongeBob.
I did think they were going to play the whole Bubble Bowl song. Or at least more of it. They just gave us the trumpets, and then we went into Travis Scott.
Yeah, they used a newly animated bit of Squidward just complaining, and then it cut to a random clip from that episode, and then it showed the trumpets, which then transitioned into sicko mode. Suffice it to say, fans of that show who were signing the petition to play the entire song at halftime were not amused.
They have petitions for everything, don't they?
Everybody thinks a petition is the answer.
I think this is another example of when the internet thought that they had a really good idea and it wasn't. Because I remember when the band LMAO was like a really big thing and everyone thought they belonged to be the Super Bowl headliner and they needed to be in the Super Bowl. And you know what? The NFL was like, that's a terrible idea. It's getting a lot of headway. You know what? Fine, we're going to put them in there and show you guys how bad they are. And going into it, they had one of the worst live performance ratings of all active bands. And then they actually put them in the NFL. And
I remember this.
And LMAO came out singing Party Rock, and everyone just kind of looked at each other like, what's happening? This is terrible. And so the internet came out with another terrible idea. And the NFL's like, We're going to go with it, but we're going to not make people born in 1950 and 1960 completely what's happening.
Girl, look at that body. Girl, look at that body.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, that the Super Bowl did not play the entire Sweet Victory song, but our very own Dallas Stars did play the song in its entirety during one of the intermissions of one of their more recent games, and the internet seems to be head over heels for that. So
good. Sports needs more SpongeBob. Hot.
I think there's at some point. Yeah, I think there's some point that the age group cuts off about people who get excited about SpongeBob.
You gotta understand, SpongeBob's a little past my time. But the Stars are actually known for doing funny bits like that. I don't know if y'all remember a couple years ago when Justin Bieber got arrested. They put up on the scoreboard Justin Bieber, Toronto Maple Leafs fan, because they happened to be playing him.
Yeah, Groobs is actually the video producer of that, and he does a fantastic job of all the memery, of all the making fun of fans, the bandwagon, and all the videos. He just does a great job.
Shout out to Groobs, 1310 the ticket. Groove.
The Groobs. Yeah, he does some fantastic work, and it's not it's not the Sweet Victory we deserved, but it was the one we needed right now, and the Stars and Groobs surely delivered. Now, with that out of the way, going down to minor league football, a topic that you might not have thought about very much, it has actually been skyrocketing in the ratings recently to the point where it actually beat some of the NBA's ratings.
James Harden and Russell Westbrook beat that.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. So the AAF, the American Alliance of Football, for those who are listening to this and have never heard of that before, it is essentially, think of minor league baseball, but for football. The NFL has their hand in the way these players are trained and coached, and it gives guys who have been cut from the NFL kind of a second chance to maybe get back on a roster and get back into the game they love. And I gotta say, it was kind of fun to watch.
Now, I've heard that the rules are a little less strict than it is in the NFL. Is this true?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's even the point where a lot of the refs that feel like they know what they're doing still don't know all the rules.
And you're telling me that this minor league football beat the NBA in ratings? Like, were there like massive hits? Was it like a high scoring game? Was there a penalty if the touchdown celebrations weren't creative enough? What is this madness?
So yeah, I'll take that for sure. The game, within the first 4 minutes of the game, a quarterback drops back on a fairly standard pass. A defensive end got free and just let loose on the quarterback, knocked his helmet off, slammed him into the ground. It was a really hard collision. It was the kind of collision that if you watch NFL football, you haven't seen one of those in a while. And it was kind of jarring as a football fan because, again, it's been several years since that was allowed in the NFL. We talk week to week about guys getting personal fouls for hits on the quarterback that haven't been personal fouls in the past. And, yeah, the first couple of minutes of this AAF, it was a really dramatic hit. I think it's definitely gone viral at this point. And it wasn't called. It wasn't called a penalty. I don't know if that speaks to the rules of the game. I don't know if that means the refs are just going to be more lenient. I don't know if it was the first 4 minutes of a brand new league and the refs didn't know what was going on. But it was kind of awesome in its own right. The quarterback, give him credit, he got right up, got right back in the game, fine, finished out the game. They lost, but yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
And I think one really neat thing that the NFL needs to take from the AFL is that they have this thing called the Sky Judge, which besides whenever they play his challenge or whatever, it goes up to the Sky Judge, which is there, and the fans will hear not only the voices but they will see the actual sky judges who are involved in the decision making about the call, so they can give immediate feedback to the people, and they will know, how they're coming to the conclusion of the call, which is something I think the NFL needs.
Yeah, the sky judge kind of plays God a little bit, and it was cool to they did challenges, and the refs on the field are talking to the sky judge, and they're all mic'd up so you can hear what's going on, and the players are all mic'd up, and the coaches are mic'd up, so you hear the quarterback in the huddle calling plays, and they have to bleep a ton of stuff out because guys are dropping F-bombs all over the place. But the access to the referees, I think that's really cool. I think that's a way to alleviate a lot of problems in the NFL.
And don't get me wrong, the sky judge is not without fail. We saw it occur where the sky judge actually made a bad call, and immediately the players who are mic'd up and the fans are just booing really loudly, letting the sky judge know that they are unhappy with the sky judge. And players who are mic'd up are dropping, like you said, F-bombs. They're mad, and they're actually letting them have it right away.
Now, speaking of quarterbacks, I've heard that the minor league football leagues have some quarterbacks and maybe even some other offensive players that we might have heard about. Is that true?
Yeah. So I picked a team, and I think we should all just pick a team real quick, just for the hell of it. And each week that we do this, we're going to update on the AAF, and whoever's team wins. I picked the Birmingham Iron because they have Trent Richardson at running back, historic flameout. It's basically Team Alabama, yeah, because they go regionally and they get these guys from colleges that aren't in the NFL. So Blake Sims, if you remember him when he played quarterback at Alabama, he won a national championship. Trent Richardson won a Heisman. He's on the team. There's a ton of guys that if you watch and you're a casual football fan, I think you'll recognize.
I'm claiming San Antonio.
Just to kind of give you guys a quick rundown on the list there, you got the Arizona Hotshots,
which
with
is actually sponsored by firefighters.
And then you have the Orlando Apollos.
Former Texas quarterback,
I was about to say Garrett Gilbert was the quarterback of that team.
And you finally have your Luke's team, the San Antonio Commanders.
I think they packed 37,000 people in the Alamo Dome for that game. That's a lot of people for a minor league football game.
It was actually pretty loud watching it on television. It seemed like not a total real football game, but
Utah gets some love here with the Salt Lake Stallions. So if you're a Utah football fan, rejoice. You finally get. And then, of course, how could you not have football in Atlanta? You have the Atlanta Legends, with your favorite quarterback involved with dogs being the offensive coordinator.
No way. Michael Vick is the offensive coordinator?
You're kidding.
Yeah, I think being offensive comes pretty natural to him.
Those poor puppies, but he was a really, really fun player in Madden 2000.
He sure was.
And then we have the aforementioned the Birmingham Iron. Blake Sims. Wow.
That's my team. That's my team for sure. I'm calling the Iron. They had a great win. I watched it on Sunday afternoon, and I'm saying it. I like minor league football more than the average NBA game.
And San Diego keeps up with their U.S. Navy appreciation, as they always do, with the San Diego Fleet. The coach is Mike Martin.
San Diego's got a football team. That's awesome. St. Louis should get one of these teams and get a football team.
They really
but Memphis gets a team. Their neighbors, the Memphis Express.
That's cool. I like that Memphis has a team.
I mean, if it's not Nashville, Memphis might as well have a team, right?
Well, Nashville's got my Tennessee Titans, which I'll go ahead and make that known. I am going to go on record as the resident Tennessee Titans fan of the group. But anyway, let's pick some teams.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to go ahead and go with Atlanta.
What was Atlanta's made up name?
The Legends, I believe.
They are the Legends.
All right. Luke, Coolhand.
Awesome.
Coolhand, what team are you picking?
The San Antonio Commanders.
That's awesome.
And I think...
Yeah, I think that Debbie... I think it's really interesting that Texas is giving... It's almost NFL tryout. Because, we always talk about expanding the NFL. This is almost a tryout for San Antonio to see if Texas can host 3 teams. Because the Spurs are wildly successful in the NBA. San Antonio is crazy about the Spurs. And if they can get behind this, team here in San Antonio, I think that it could send a message to the NFL.
I totally agree. It's going to take more than 30,000 people. I bet by the end of this season, they're almost selling out the Alamo Dome. And even further, I agree with your point. San Antonio's got like 1.4 million people. It's like the 6th biggest city in the country. And their fans are just bloodthirsty, savage for a team. I think it'd be really cool to see the NFL there.
It's definitely a travesty that San Antonio only has one major professional sports franchise. They got some minor league stuff going on, but they should have an MLS team, and they should have either a baseball or a football team. They could support one of those.
Yeah, I really think that San Antonio the city is gonna really take them. They're gonna embrace them because their minor league baseball team just got bumped up from AA to AAA, and now that the Spurs are there, and their baseball team's getting an upgrade, football's getting an upgrade. This is really a chance for the city to come alive, get behind their guys, and show America that they can get behind it and be a major power, because their population is only going to increase in the coming years.
Guess who's already got tickets to the San Antonio Commanders game on the 23rd?
Do you?
Yeah, my a couple of my fraternity brothers, they're like, hey, let's go to the game. They both live in San Antonio, so we got tickets, so we're going to the game on.
Do you have your jersey ready?
I do not have my jersey ready. To be honest with you, I forgot that the league was starting until I was flipping through the channels and saw that it was.
Where do they sell jerseys?
Just go to the AAF.com. They should have everything.
Yeah, get your Atlanta Legends swag. I already got my Iron hoodie on the way.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Yeah, I think, this is one of the rare cases where you can actually say, I'm not going to get a player jersey. I'm just going to put my name on the back, because we don't really know most of the players.
Mickey, what's your team? You're the last one you got to pick.
Oh, shoot. I'm going to go with the team that sounds the coolest, and that's the San Diego Fleet. I haven't the slightest idea if they're good or bad this season, or if they even have a good team. In fact, I didn't even know they existed until a few minutes ago, but you know what? I'm hitching my horse to that wagon. San Diego Fleet.
Can't go wrong with Mike Marks.
For sure. That's a fun pick. All right, so each week we should definitely circle up and talk a little trash on how our AAF team did.
Done.
I don't think anyone would be opposed to this. But speaking of opposition, if we were to switch sports here, it appears that two of the biggest names in the MLB right now, Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, are still free agents. Now, Manny Machado, he is very famous currently for being the last person that Boston struck out in the World Series. And then Bryce Harper is Bryce Harper. Now, both of them are still free agents. Is this a money issue? Are the teams they want to go to not interested? Why are these two players who have some solid numbers behind them still free agents?
Well, a lot of that has to do with it's kind of a combination of a lot of things. a lot of it has to do with there's really only a few teams they can go to that can actually afford their services, even at a discount rate. And so I think that's really hurting them right now.
I also want to mention that the players themselves are probably the biggest reason why they're not getting signed. So you have attitude. I don't hustle outplays Manny Machado. I don't know about you, but throwing $300 million to a guy who doesn't want to hustle out a ball that he batted into play does not sound like a solid bet to me. You go down to your local Little League field, and no coach out there is teaching them, oh, did you just hit a ball into the ground at the shortstop? Yeah, just go ahead, take your time, jog it out. It's fine. Don't worry, you'll be thrown out. That does not happen. And that is not something that you'd expect of a $300 million caliber player. So, I think, and then he's cleating people intentionally in the postseason. So he was off in my book. Even if I had the money, if I had a team that needed that next level, he's out in my book. And as for Bryce Harper, his actions, again, have always, in my opinion, said, don't sign this guy. From intentionally smearing the Braves logo behind home plate and, batting, 240 almost last season? And he was only a shoo-in to the All-Star game because it was hosted in D.C., and he was the franchise poster boy. He did not deserve to go. And that is my solid take on him. And, his team's going into the dumpster fire, and you really expect a $300 million guy to rally his team. They got Scherzer, they got Rendon, they got Zimmerman, they got all these people who are super talented, and you're telling me a $300 million player is fine, just growing his hair out, throwing temper tantrums, and not leading his team to the postseason in a very, very weak division? No, he's not a $300 million player.
That's fair. I think you made a lot of really good points there, because both of those guys, talent-wise, should be $300 million, but they just it seems like they can't get out of their own way somehow.
Yeah, so I'm more of a casual Major League Baseball fan here, but my perception of these guys has always kind of been, well, Zubi, I think you said it well. They're kind of punks. They're kind of they're not locker room guys. They're not coachable. They're not hustle guys. Bryce Harper's always kind of been a pretty boy guy, but where are we at in Major League Baseball though? Do you still pay? Is it going to take a team signing them for less money? Is that going to change it? Or are they still going to pony up $300 million for this type of guy? What do you think?
Well, part of it too is the market has also kind of corrected itself over the last few years. The wages have been getting so out of hand that they just had to correct it. They couldn't just keep paying these guys because it was going to get to $40, $50 million, $55 million for these guys, and that's just out.
Yeah, I also think that the people who deserve the mega contracts are either coming up or have already signed. So, you got Mike Trout in 2 years. I don't care if he wants $400 million. I would give him $400 million because I'd rather take a Mike Trout on my team any day.
He's a great guy.
Arenado is also coming up next year. He's one of the major free agents. We got 2 superstar stud third basemen coming up next year. And I'd rather take a Nolan Arenado over a Manny Machado, who, has all those terrible traits, in my opinion, who intentionally throws his bat at Oakland A's players while he's batting. Like, that is not somebody that I want on my team. I want Nolan Arenado on my team. I want a Mike Trout. Those are the people that are worth $300 million, in my opinion.
Now, a point all of you brought up is that their personalities and off the field, as well as on the field, antics and just work ethic is a huge issue and a huge red flag for teams wanting to sign these two players. Do you guys think, are these two kind of like sore thumbs in the MLB player base, or has this happened before? Like, do some baseball players have a history of having a personality so toxic that teams just want to stay away?
I don't know if it's a personality so toxic that teams just want to stay away. I just think we're at a time in sports where personalities are like this, and I think whether it's baseball, certainly basketball, football, there are a lot of people we can name that fall in a situation kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that certain teams do pay attention to the attitudes. You got Baltimore and San Diego and Boston going out there saying like they are only going to sign some of the best stand-up players. So Jose Reyes with the domestic abuse charge, Ozuna with the domestic abuse, they weren't even being touched. But meanwhile, Houston's like, all right, they're fine with me. Roll this Chapman and the Yankees, they're fine with that. So it has to be that the talent has to equal the attitude, and for the higher teams to take a gamble on that. So because if the talent's not there, you're gonna find yourself looking for a job very, very quickly. Just like how the Phillies, Jonathan Papelbon, after he grabbed his crotch at the fans and his talent was declining, nobody wanted to even sign him to a minors deal because of his attitude. I mean, he choked Bryce Harper in the dugout. That's not a kind of attitude that you want on your team, even if he's a comeback player candidate.
Is part of this the good old boys and the unwritten rules side of baseball that's still ever prevalent, even as they try to discuss rule changes and stuff like that? Does all of this stem from that good old boy kind of?
And also comes down to the budget, because you don't want to see a low market team or a rebuilding team sign these toxic players and to mega contracts, and then they're trying to sell them off immediately. That's not good for baseball. You want to find somebody.
Rangers, A-Rod.
Yeah, and you want to, if they get somewhere, you want them to have a home. That's good for baseball, where he becomes a market, he becomes a picture of the franchise. Someone like the White Sox, who are on the up of a rebound, they're coming right out of it. Harper, Machado would be a great fit in the White Sox. But you're trying to tell me that he belongs on the Mariners? No, they don't. Neither of them do.
That's a small point.
It is definitely a tough situation for both of these players, and our sympathies are, quote-unquote, with them.
These guys are
and also
make freaking bank.
They really are. You got to look at Scott Boras as their client, the guy who he hyper overpaid you, Valdo Jimenez a few years ago. He's going to get his payday, and you also got to remember some of his other clients are being very, very picky. Dallas Keuchel's asking for 6 years, and so is the closer who just won the World Series with Boston. Craig Kimbrell, he's also asking for 6 years. These are absurd contracts for people who are well into their 30s now. You can't be asking that.
Do you think World Series championship wins have any influence when it comes to these mega contracts?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Like how much sway? Like for example, you mentioned the closer for the Red Sox.
Yeah, I think that by having someone of that pedigree up there, it really not only strengthens your bullpen, but it can help guide your young ones. Because, Brandon McCarthy, whenever he was going to the World Series, he was talking to them. He was there with the Dodgers versus the Astros. And the last time he was there, he was with the White Sox in 2005. And, he was telling his pitchers, he's talking to the young kids, like Urias and everything. He's telling them, he says, it's okay to walk people during the season. You don't need to get them out with your best stuff. You kind of need to save that for the postseason or the moments that really matter when the bases are loaded. So you don't always have to throw your best, and that's something that a lot of young players don't see the long game unless they're with veteran players who were successful.
That's a really good point. How veteran players can cultivate and change some of these mega talents when they're young and they're impressionable. How it can. Well, it could be better for baseball in general.
Well, it's true in every sport when you have these veteran guys. What's the true value of leadership? What's it worth in money costs? When the Cardinals got Matheny after he retired to coach, and he was great for those 3 years, and then it took him a year basically to dig his own grave, and it was gone forever. And so what is the true value of leadership?
I think you just have to look at two things there. Is what kind of talent of the prospects is below you, and also how long they're able to speak to them. Because you got an Andy Abania over there with the Mariners, and there were really no prospects for Abanias to kind of groom or give guidance to. The people that he was talking to were out of a job within a year or two. That's just how the Mariners have been. They were not legitimate prospects. So, the leadership is just kind of keeping everyone's high hopes and morale up. That's it. And then, you got someone like Beltre who was stepped in, saw young Elvis Andrus, and was able to groom him into a real leader. And now Beltre, Hall of Famer, stepping away from the game. And we all think that Elvis Andrus is a very well-polished diamond.
It's a really good example of that, the Beltre and Andrus kind of thing, because Andrus' career it had its moments where it was a bit shaky early, and definitely, in the losses to Toronto in the playoffs and things like that, there were a lot of question marks on him, and now he's a solid kind of gem that the Rangers have.
Do you think Adrian Beltre will come back as a coach?
Yes.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I would love it, but I really don't see him coming in. I see him more of a Michael Young, where he's a player advisor kind of thing, because Beltre really values his family. He has always been a family guy, and the time it takes to commit to a major league season is massive.
Now, is his family back in the Dominican Republic? I mean, I'd imagine so, right?
Actually, his closest is, his wife and his kids. They're actually up here in DFW. They actually recently just got featured in a JCPenney Christmas commercial where they were meeting random shoppers and giving them their entire wish list for free. But, Beltre, being the guy that he is, polished his halo and asked for a Christmas list to be donated to a local charity instead.
Man, that is just so Beltre. That is so Beltre. Number getting retired this year. R.I.P., man. Not R.I.P. I mean, he's not dead, but, he doesn't play for the Rangers anymore.
Hats off to him.
Yes, baseball caps off to Adrian Beltre. We're so glad he is one of the... Do you think he's going to get his own, restaurant at Texas Live?
That's the real top mark for a Rangers legend now, is if they can get a steakhouse in Texas.
Oh, yeah. I think that there's definitely going to be a spot for him if he wants a spot. But, we're talking about a Ranger player that has risen to grace, but we recently have a threat that might fall from grace very soon with Rangers ex-closer Wetland. John Wetland, who also won the World Series with the Yankees, got arrested.
Oh, man, it's real bad what he did. Supposedly.
What did he supposedly do? I am very not aware of this story.
So, John Wetland, who lives currently in Westlake, was arrested on multiple charges of child, indecency with a child, and there's multiple charges there, and it stems back for years. This starting whenever the victim was 4 years old and going forward. And the police got involved here, and a lot of players are actually coming forward and not defending him, saying, yes, he's always had anger issues. Yes, he's always had kind of this weird private life. This does not surprise me.
Oh, no. Child grape is a no. No. So is he's facing legal charges?
Oh, yeah, he's done, man. He's going to prison for a while, as he should.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been the kind of guy that says, well, that they're innocent until they're proven guilty. But one of the things that also kind of strikes me up is average people don't do this. Average people don't have their name dragged through the mud for child indecency charges because they're not in those environments. They're not putting those people themselves in those situations. And, his career isn't at the peak, so it's not like they're trying to attack him before he gets something great. He is on the down, and this is a serious thing.
I agree. Bury him and stone him. I say no to child rape every time, as I think we all should. And we all
absolutely agree with you.
Definitely.
Of course. Well,
you hear that, people? We are anti-child stuff.
Because we
Let it be.
Because we have more than 2 functioning brain cells. Let it be known. Now, a point that when we were talking about Manny Machado and Bryce Harper is that you want to make, when you sign these free agents, you want to make them like a franchise player. You want to build them a home, or at least bring them to a home. Which, this question I actually stumbled across on social media, and I know that Zubi was at least pondering it for a bit. To give this question context, the Texas Rangers are getting a brand new ballpark opening relatively soon. Like, I imagine, Zubi, do you by chance have the exact time when it's going to be open?
Yeah, so the Rangers, this is their final season right now. 2019 is going to be their last season in the Temple. And then they're going to be moving into the domed stadium with turf field and next year. And the opening days to actually see it in action, that will be early March whenever they host college baseball games. So that'll be your first chance to sneak in and see what the stadium looks and operates and feels like.
That's next March, so a year from now.
Correct.
Well, March 2020 is something that all 4 of us are looking forward to.
How do we feel about turf? Are you guys pro-turf or are you anti-turf?
So I was extremely anti-turf. I really was for the longest time until I started to hear some of the problems about it. And, we're working at the stadium for so long, I actually got the great chance to meet with some people who worked at other stadiums. And I met with a guy.
Inside information.
Right. I met with a guy who worked up north in the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium, and he said that a thing that, like, them and the Seattle Mariners struggle with in the later months, like September and October, is keeping the grass green because it's constantly being trampled on. It's very hard to open the roof up, get it natural light, let the grass grow and heal. It's very tough for them and during the year. And then there's actually patches of grass that die, so they have to spray paint over it. And I think that's something that's really, really important to note there because it just goes to show you that having a grass field in a dome stadium isn't the easiest to maintain. It really isn't, and it's not a solid bet because if you look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, they are giving up their grass for the exact same turf that the Rangers are going to opt for.
Yeah, and also, we're not playing on AstroTurf from 1982 anymore. I mean, this is state of the art, really good stuff. The ball doesn't ricochet 30 feet off the ground off this, basically a layer of foam on top of concrete anymore. It's really good stuff. I think more dome stadiums, like you mentioned, Arizona, they're going to it. I think Houston should look at it. I think it should be in more stadiums, to be honest.
As a guy that grew up watching the Houston Astros in the Astrodome, man, that was garbage to watch. It was so... Baseball is meant to be played outside, okay? That's the first thing and foremost thing I will say. Baseball is meant to be played outside. And I know it's a retractable roof, but during the summer, it's going to be closed most of the time like it is in Houston. But if it's going to be that much of a pain to try to maintain, because part of the reason why they're doing this is to prevent injuries from the heat of the summer in Texas. And so if this new stuff is going to prevent injuries, then I'm good to go on that.
Yeah, and they really did. They put a lot of science and research into it. There's seashells getting mixed into this new turf to increase the bounce of the ball. And, players who actually have played on this before have said it's very comfortable, that they love how it feels on their knees. They said it feels better than grass because grass sometimes will snag and sometimes will have those really big divots whenever players who like to dig in their cleats, like certain outfielders, Puig, who likes to dig in really deep and then leave a divot there. If the Cincinnati Reds come by,
dirty play.
Yeah, just go ahead, replace the turf, and boom, no more divot right there. And meanwhile, grass, you're pulling out a bunch of, just soil and just miracle grow and hoping that it grows, and some spray paint and hoping that it grows.
Yeah, I like turf. I think it's cool. I think it's going to look great. I'm also very pro baseball indoors. It's sad to see the Temple go, but since we started talking about it, the new ballpark's going to be fantastic, and I will be one of the first out there, most definitely.
Oh, yeah, I'm very excited for an indoor stadium. I think that's the way it should be. I think that all stadiums should have the option to have the roof open or closed with them. But the thing that I think the only holdback that I have is that there was a 1993 video of the Ranger Stadium being built, and you can see former President George Bush being driven around with other owners of the Rangers, and they're in a cart, and the ballpark designer and the architect next to him informed President Bush saying, "We've added green concrete ballasts onto the top of the temple right now that exists, and they're still there today, so that you can affix a roof at a later point whenever, should you so wish." It was meant to be a century-long stadium. So that, to me, is something that really bothers me, is that it shouldn't be that big of a problem to keep the stadium built on a new roof. But they said, it's going to be so expensive. I said, I think that a new stadium, there's no way that a new stadium is cheaper than a new roof.
I agree. I do agree with that 100%. The stadium's $1 billion. And, to renovate, I'm talking, like I know a ton about stadium prices. But I'm going to guess you're right. It can't cost more to put a roof on an old structure than it can to just build a brand new, humongous structure next to Jerry World and Texas Live in this huge complex.
Think
about how much money worth of stadiums is going to be out there now. You're going to have $3 billion worth of buildings next door to each other.
Ocean's 11.
And you actually kind of got to remember that technically there's going to be 4 stadiums next to each other. You're going to have the Cowboys Stadium, you're going to have the XFL Stadium, you're going to have the Ranger Stadium, and the Esports Stadium.
I forgot about that.
Right.
Arlington is just becoming a sports complex.
I don't really plan on going out to the esports arena yet. I haven't seen it that strikes my interest yet, but I don't doubt that they will have an event that will make me want to go and check it out. And believe me, I do want to see it, but I want to go there for the right reasons.
Right, like maybe a convention or something.
I'll be at an XFL game for sure. I would like to see what football looks like inside of that baseball stadium. I think it's going to be real.
Oh, yeah, I am completely jumping onto that bandwagon. And speaking of football stadium, in baseball, you got the Oakland Raiders in talks right now to use the San Francisco Giants stadium.
Really now?
They play a bowl game at Yankee Stadium. They also play soccer there. There's a lot of this going on with especially these nice classic-looking stadiums where teams are trying to multitask. Even Globe Life hosted a golf.
Yeah, and you got the Oakland Raiders in battle right now with a lawsuit with the city of Oakland. So Oakland doesn't even want to host the Raiders anymore, and that's a major issue. So they can't host their team there, and that's why they went over to San Francisco and said, "Hey, can we use your park, which is no longer called AT&T? It's actually getting renamed." And said, "Can we use that as the headquarters for the Raiders 2019-2020?"
Yeah, that's crazy that they actually don't have a home yet. They haven't signed the paperwork yet, so we never really know. But I can't believe they actually have no home. A professional NFL franchise has no place to play.
What strange times we live in.
San Antonio. I said that freaking 2 years ago. I thought the Oakland Raiders would look cool in San Antonio. I think San Antonio would love them as a franchise. I think they already have a building to play in that would be suitable. You could renovate that
You
building.
can't play in the Alamo Dome, man. I'll tell you the story some other time of how I personally know that that's not true. But the Alamo Dome is a piece of garbage. Even though it was built in the mid-'90s, it's one of the worst stadiums I've ever been in my life. It reminded me of being in the Astrodome.
I've actually been to the Alamo Dome twice now for a baseball game. And it definitely does feel like you went back into the 80s in that stadium. No chalk trash on San Antonio. I was very thankful they hosted a baseball game there, but you can't host a baseball game there because right field wall was 280 feet. My local softball field's wall was 285. I was like, it's easier to hit a home run here than it is in my softball field. This can't be a thing. It has to stay football.
I've been there as well, man, for a baseball game, and yeah, it's weird. It's not. Plus, since it was designed really just to be a football stadium, the seats, like out in center field, don't face home plate, and so you can't really watch the game comfortably.
Yeah, speaking of watching the game comfortably, I believe one of the benefits to bring this back to the more local discussion over the new roofed stadium is that this is a question I want to pose to y'all. Since baseball is very much a spring and summertime sport, in the Texas heat, some people are just, now I don't know the exact numbers, but I'd imagine quite a few people are just maybe turned off from going to Rangers and maybe Astros games altogether because that means they're going to have to sit in that blistering heat for so long. And I believe this new roof could maybe alleviate some of that. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm one of them. I will raise my hand right now and say I've been to a ton of Rangers games at Globe Life. It's a blast. It's a really fun stadium to watch a game in. It's got a super classic feel to it. I've seen some amazing moments in that stadium. And, man, I just won't go out there in the summertime. It is so hot when it is 105 degrees inside the bowl of that stadium. Depending on where you're sitting, there is no shade until, the 5th, 6th inning. I mean, you just bake. It's just not fun. It's just not fun. And so I'm pro put a roof on it. I'm pro move over there. I know it's expensive and it's sad to see the ballpark go, but I'm one of them. I think the heat that's a real thing. I think it's a factor for the team.
Oh, it's a major factor for the team. You have people like CC Sabathia, borderline Hall of Fame candidate, pass out because
sweating his fat ass off.
Yeah, and he passed out because of heat stroke. And I mean, that's not going to attract somebody because if you have pitchers hearing that other pitchers are passing out or can't even get out of the 4th or 5th inning because of the 100-degree heat out there playing those day games, that's not going to attract any talent that wants to come out and deal with that heat. I'd rather go down to Houston if I was a pitcher because that way, it's 100 degrees out. Okay, cool. We got AC. We're fine. Arizona, we got AC. We're fine. That's something else that I'd rather take over any day over the heat. Having been out there for so many seasons selling water, it's not enjoyable as a fan either. You're forking over close to $6 per water bottle for one water bottle, and as a family of 4 or 5, that you can't ask a family of 4 or 5 to sit out there for a few hours and in 110-degree heat forking out that kind of money.
Yeah, it's brutal. They really messed up because you mentioned that Houston and Arizona already have this figured out with retractable roof stadiums, and those stadiums were not built that far past when Globe Life was opened. It wasn't called Globe Life at the time, but like you mentioned, they built it with possible renovations to put a roof on it. I don't know. At the day and age, where we are in sports, where we are with the city of Arlington, it does seem like a greedy money grab, but damn it, give me air-conditioned baseball. I'm all in.
Well, and I do agree they probably need to put a roof on the stadium. I love going to the ballpark. It's my favorite ballpark out there more than anything I've been to. I've been to about a dozen. And I love it out there, but a Sunday afternoon game in July is just pure misery.
Yes, I have a personal story of getting sunburned at Globe Life Park. I'm 95% sure my skin stain is still on there, on those metal seats. All right. Well, we're going to move right along here to the subject of the hoops ball, the NBAs. We had a lot of... it was the trade deadline not so long ago. We had some big shifts happen. Like, for example, I think the most notable one that everyone's talking about is how the Los Angeles Lakers tried their darndest to get that player Anthony Davis, but they just didn't.
The unibrow man. Yeah. Well, now, but talks break down like that all the time. I mean, really, it's in the Pelicans' best interest to hold on to Anthony Davis for the rest of the season and trade him in the offseason when there's going to be more teams available, more teams trying to search for him, and you don't have to use as many expiring contracts.
Yeah, I agree. It's a weird place we are with the NBA where, LeBron, this is not LeBron's fault, but I think LeBron perfected this. And we have huge players, big-name players, marquee names that demand where they want to go. And if they're unhappy, they take to social media and publicly bitch about it. And they force themselves into a trade, and they collude with one another, and they get to playing on the same team, kind of like, I mean, again, LeBron did not start this, but I think LeBron perfected it with his decision when he went to Miami. He created the best super team we'd seen in a while. But I mean, Shaq and Kobe had done this. There's other examples of it along the way. But yeah, Anthony Davis did it. LeBron seems to be wanting to trade his entire team away just to get Anthony Davis over, which creates noise in the locker room. I will argue, though, I think the Mavs made the biggest move of the entire trade deadline.
Yes, the Mavs traded away 3 players as well as a few draft picks for currently injured Kristaps Porzingis, as well as 2 other players from the New York Knicks. And it appears that Mark Cuban is dedicated to keeping Kristaps Porzingis in Dallas, as well as Luka Doncic, with him admitting that him trading away Steve Nash to the Phoenix Suns was a mistake.
Well, they had to do something. DSJ wasn't happy. They clearly weren't going to go anywhere with the team makeup it is, because don't forget the secondary move of trading Harrison Barnes as well and picking up Josh Jackson. And so they wanted a team to play European-style basketball because they feel that's the way the NBA is going. And it kind of is, with all the three-point shooting and with all the, high-scoring games that's going on right now and the lack of defense that's being played in the NBA, mostly because they're being limited. They decided this is the way they wanted to go, was to play European-style basketball. So they brought in the 2 best European players in the game.
And it makes sense, too. What you have in Luka seems to be transcendent and seems to be really next level, where what you had in Dennis Smith in the previous draft was cool and it was flashy, and I think it's a usable piece on a good franchise, but it's not Luka. Luka is just incredible, and he's 19. And when things work out, and it happens to be that the Unicorn wanted out of New York, everything kind of made sense, and all of a sudden, the Mavs are becoming essentially an Eastern European all-star team, and with some room to play on the free agency market next year.
Yes, I did read somewhere that the Mavs could have up to $30 million in cap space. So if the Mavs wanted to sign like a huge free agent next season, like for example Kevin Durant or DeMarcus Cousins, assuming they leave Golden State, which if they win the championship this season is a strong possibility, I don't think the Mavs could get them. I think like high caliber players such as those are going to want max contracts, but I think the Mavs could get a good trade in here, or maybe a good free agency pickup here in the offseason.
Well, they really need a strong point guard that can play some defense and shoot for them. They're going to need what they really need to spend that $30 million on. Don't bring in some big name guy. Bring in some quality role players to fill in the holes that you have. Have some shooters. Have a guy who can fend in the low post. Stuff like that. I know they had to trade DeAndre Jordan to the Knicks, but bring him back. He'd be an ideal fit for what they're trying to do next year.
Yeah, the Mavs are currently running a 2 power forward lineup since their sole traditional center of DeAndre Jordan is now with New York, and their secondary traditional center, Salah Mejri, has not been getting as much playing time as the former. So, and with Kristaps Porzingis still being injured, it is interesting to see who they try to bring in, because with the whole DSJ and Luka controversy, it really did seem like that Rick Carlisle wants to run the offense through Luka. What I mean by that is he wants Luka to be the facilitator. He wants him to be point guard because
Luka's running point.
Oh yeah, because that's what he did in Europe when he played for Real Madrid, and it led him to all that success. So from a coaching standpoint, you know, I think
I'm really more talking on the defensive side of the ball for the point guard. You really need a guy who can cover a high-end point guard in this league, because that's what you're going to run across as you get later in the
Yeah, with the emergence of the long range game and that Stephen Curry brings to the NBA, the court has definitely been expanded. That it's almost to the point where you need to be fast enough to guard the point guard that you're defending at the top of the key, but almost at the half court mark because of how much range these point guards are having nowadays. So, yeah, defense is definitely going to be an interesting shift within the NBA. For example, the Philadelphia 76ers won against the Los Angeles Lakers recently, 140-something to 120. Now, a few short years ago, if you scored 120 points, that means you win the game. That's no longer the case here.
No, well, and some of that's the changing and refereeing. You know, they really are favoring more offense. But also, these guys have just become unbelievably good shooters. I mean, you know, Boogie Cousins can shoot threes. He's 7'2".
Yeah, the days of the traditional center who guards low post and blocks and rebounds is starting to get phased out in favor of this new hybrid center with like Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns and, like you mentioned, DeMarcus Cousins, who can all shoot behind the arc. And with that being said, wait, what?
Oh, I was gonna say, I also want to point out what the Sixers did, bringing in Tobias Harris. I think that's really gonna help them.
Yeah,
I think it really provides. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the Tobias Harris trade to Philadelphia, I mean, it's only making a strong team stronger. And then you also have Marc Gasol going to the Raptors, and then
that was big.
And then you also got the Bucks getting a player or two in there. I mean, the Eastern Conference is where the power shifts are happening, which is typically not where we see these sort of things happen, which is a very interesting time for basketball.
Definitely.
You got something, Vinny?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just a fun time to be a Mavs fan. I can't quite follow everything that goes on in the league, but behind Luka and Kristaps and what they're building behind that heading into free agency next year. It's nice to have good basketball around Dallas again. It just is.
Yes, the Mavs could potentially have Dirk and Steve Nash situation again with Kristaps and Luka, but time will indeed tell. And with that being said, this is the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. We appreciate y'all heading out for coming out to see us and listening to our opinions and ramblings. My name is Mickey, and I'm signing off.
This is Coolhand.
We'll see you later. Dallas, Texas. This is Vinny. Signing off.
You gonna say goodbye, Zubi? No? Well, Zubi says goodbye in spirit. Alright, have a good night, y'all. Thanks for listening.